So can Chelsea put the final nail in the Ange coffin at Nottingham Forest? These are my thoughts, feelings, everything in between. And team selector ahead of the game tomorrow at the City Ground, Saturday lunchtime. Chelsea back in Premier League action. It's a big game. I think it really is an important game because after beating Liverpool before this international break, it gives us so much positivity and optimism. But we really need to capitalise on that positivity and optimism. And given some of the injury news that has kind of dominated headlines today regarding Chelsea for the short and long term, how do Chelsea respond to that, and what will be Enzo Maresca's approach given all of that? We're going to get into some of that in today's show. Please like, subscribe. If you're new to the podcast, please do give us a positive rating review. Share the show on YouTube, the podcast feed as well, around with friends. Really gets more people involved in the community and is greatly appreciated. You can also check out my most recent article on hooligan soccer along with my Substack. All of that good stuff, links in the description box below. As we always do with these previews, we start off with the Enzo Maresca press conference. What did he have to say? It really was a mixed bag in terms of injury news. So the headline, can't get away from it, regarding Cole Palmer, out for another 6 weeks. Now that isn't 6 weeks until he returns to training at Cobham. That is 6 weeks until he is back in action on the pitch, which based on estimates of those 6 weeks, if you go from today till the end of that 6 week period, it means that Palmer at least is going to miss 8 Chelsea games. That takes us all the way up to the end of November, when Chelsea would have just faced Barcelona in the Champions League and would be about to face Arsenal in the Premier League at home on the 30th. So whether he's ready to play that game, whether he's going to be quicker, slower, we will wait to see. But this is what he had to say. Unfortunately, he needs 6 more weeks. Yes, absolutely. No surgery. We just try and protect Cole as much as we can. Medical team are not magicians. We hope 6 weeks are enough. So it's a little bit more of a delay, actually, of what we heard. We knew that Palmer wasn't going to be back till November. So it's not a massive shock that he's out till next month. It's just, I guess you could argue, is it adding 3 more weeks rather than 6 more weeks, if you think of it like that? Because we were talking about it earlier in the week that it's November. So it's not a case that we expected him to be ready for this game. So I think there's a bit of like perspective on that front. But yeah, we hope it won't be any longer than that. As well, Benoit Badiashile out until December. That is a shock. We didn't expect to hear that today. Obviously, he got injured against Liverpool. And it's a real shame for Badiashile because he seems to have this real rotten luck of he starts to find some form and rhythm at Chelsea, and then he gets hit with an injury. He, I thought, was brilliant against Liverpool. I thought he showed some really good signs against Benfica, and it felt like with Colwell's injury, this could be the route back into kind of dominant and consistent first team minutes for Badiashile for the first time in a long period of time at Chelsea. But that will not be the case now, and how Chelsea respond to their ongoing kind of defensive injury issues this season have kind of not gone away. It's kind of been the most affected area of our squad this year. There is also doubts over Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez and Pedro Neto. They did not train yesterday. They will try to do so today. Reece James, though, is fit, so that's really good news. Tosin is fit. Fofana is back from his concussion problem. And Andre Santos is also available, which is, really good news regarding this game. So a bit of a mixed bag, and post the international break, there's always this kind of that confusion or kind of just unknown really in terms of where are players at fitness-wise, how much of a risk is going to be taken given it's going to be a quick turnaround to the next game. We've got a lot of midweek games in this block before the next international break. So we'll get into that in my team selector. Let's take a look at Nottingham Forest. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou walked from kind of, a lot of joy at the end of his Spurs reign, but a lot of question marks over his future. He's walked kind of from one situation into another with Forest, and it's not going well. He hasn't won a game so far, losing 4 of the last 5. They are 17th in the Premier League in terms of those games. Lost 3-0 to Arsenal, 3-2 to Swansea away in the Cup, drew to Burnley, drew to Real Betis, lost to Sunderland, lost to Midtjylland and lost to Newcastle. So it's not looking good for Ange Postecoglou. In terms of numbers for Nottingham Forest so far this year, pretty bleak. 19th for goals per match, 16th for goals conceded per match, 16th for XG, 6th though for average possession. So they're actually having a lot of the ball, but not doing really anything with it, and defensively not being that good. That is the problem currently with Forest. They kind of are in a no man's land. They're not solid defensively. They're not really effective attack-wise, and that's probably making for quite a miserable viewing experience for Forest fans who, already are showing their discontent after Nuno was sacked earlier in the year. They're second for XG conceded, first for penalties conceded, second for saves per match, so they are giving away a lot of high-quality chances. Ange Postecoglou, I was just recording the pod with Louis for the Chelsea Echo. Please go and check that out, the Chelsea Echo, if you haven't already. And he was quite emotional, kind of criticising Ange Postecoglou, and I think Ange does get he does evoke that kind of reaction from people. I think that it's weird with Ange Postecoglou. I just to kind of simplify it, because this is not a Nottingham Forest podcast, and there will be lots of discussion, and has been lots of discussion about him as a coach and kind of his character and style of play for a long period of time now. I think there is a nuance and kind of a disconnect here, because I actually like listening to him speak about football, but I think it's undeniable based on his Premier League record for a long period of time now that he assembles, and kind of it just doesn't seem to be a coach that is rising to the level of the Premier League. His teams are really poor at some basic things. If you look at some of the goals that have been conceded by Nottingham Forest just since he's taken over, they are very reminiscent of some of the goals and defensive issues that his Spurs team had. That's not because he's playing this stupid high line or doing things quite the same as Spurs. They are playing with three at the back. Theoretically, they should be a bit more defensively solid, but especially from set pieces, they're pretty horrendous. Some of the goals they conceded against Midfield were really, really poor. Basic stuff, and it's kind of that kind of lack of ability to adapt or just really act on those flaws that I think if I'm a Forest fan, I'm really concerned, because 17th in the league, we've seen the promoted teams actually be a lot better than we expected. They could be dragged in very quickly, and I don't think Ange, if he remains in this current form, is going to be in this job for much longer, and it is a great opportunity for Chelsea to capitalise and get themselves the 3 points. And I think that despite Forest maybe and showing in the Europa League that he can maybe put a counter-attacking team out there, I'm not sure it's that stable. You don't get the sense that the players are really buying into what he's doing. There hasn't really been a response from the players. It seems to be a change, a little bit like, just from a Chelsea perspective, it reminds me slightly of like the Tuchel to Graham Potter, where because Tuchel, especially more from a fan perspective, maybe like so much love was there for Tuchel that it wasn't a change that was being cried out for by really anyone. And if you're a Forest fan, you're obviously going to be quite happy with what Nuno produced last year. And it doesn't seem like really it's kind of revitalised things. It's kind of dragged things further down and only created and kind of elevated the chaos that has been around that club since the summer, really. So, yeah, again, Chelsea meet this team at a good time. It's whether Chelsea can fully capitalise on that following an international break. So going into my predicted 11, I think the most difficult and challenging part of this 11 for me is the centre-back pairing, which arguably has been the most challenging part of the team to predict every single week because of the injury crisis. I think Rob Sanchez will obviously start in goal. I think Reece James will start this game. He's fit. He didn't go on international duty, so it's not really the case last time where he played a lot of minutes for Thomas Tuchel, and then I kind of expected that Maresca would use Malo Gusto. So I think Reece will start this game. Malo obviously played quite an effective role as a central midfielder last time, but I don't really think this is the game for that. And when you're using James and Gusto, it's more for tactical kind of necessity, and kind of you're coming up against a higher calibre opponent. I don't really think that's the approach that Chelsea should be going for, and I'd be looking to add an extra attacker in this team against a Forest team where I expect Chelsea to dominate a lot of the ball, or at least have the opportunity to really impose themselves on this game. The back two, I just think Tosin, despite only just returning from injury, I think will be used in this game because of how Maresca uses Tosin quite regularly. I think he likes to use him against imposing teams. Chris Wood, who is still scoring goals for Nottingham Forest, a team that maybe from set pieces is going to look to exploit Chelsea much more. Just add a bit more, height, physicality, and even on the ball, I think Tosin's a bit underrated from a build-up perspective. On the left side of the fence, I just had the conversation I had with Louis. It's kind of swayed me a bit. And the reason it swayed me a bit is that I was originally going to say like Trev Chalobah, right? No injury problems. It was just suspension. Arguably, all of the centre-backs have an argument to start this game. And that's what makes it unpredictable. I think you could talk to 5 Chelsea fans and they may give you 5 different centre-back pairings for this game. And I wouldn't really argue against it because not only the form of players, injuries, players returning, what combination is going to work. I think it's kind of unpredictable at the moment. But there is kind of a wild argument here based just on profile of build-up of Jarell Hatto being used. And the reason I'll say Jarell Hatto is a left footer in this defence, which we don't have and you will not have if you're playing Trev there, if you're playing Josh Achimpong there, if you're playing Wesley Fofana. And, maybe, have we even seen Tosin and Fofana as just a strict kind of back two? It's more a case if we saw against Brentford where I think Chalobah and Tosin played and Fofana was kind of shifted out wide. So there is that argument. It's kind of a wild one. I think it's probably percentage-wise unlikely. I think it's more likely that Hatto plays against his former club in midweek in the Champions League. But it's one to ponder. And from a tactical point of view, I could kind of understand it from a build-up point of view. But there also is a part of me that just kind of thinks that Trev will start. Tosin and Trev has kind of been a first choice back to so far this year. It's probably the most used one so far this year. I'm not saying it's the best one, but I just get a sense that that is what Maresca may go back to for this game. But Hatto is a kind of an outside shout. And listen, Josh Achimpong, I think his performance against Liverpool was brilliant. So there is a part of me that would like to see Josh get more minutes. He, I think, in this system would be used on the left side of the defence rather than the right side of the defence if you're going to start Tosin, which I think will happen. Cucurella at left back. He obviously played such a big role, a vital role once again for Chelsea against Liverpool. Central midfield, I'm actually going to give Enzo Fernandez a rest here, and I think it is a really good thing that Andre Santos is back. I think if Caicedo's fit, he's going to mostly start, isn't he? So Caicedo, obviously, after the performance he had against Liverpool. And also Santos and Caicedo is kind of a physically imposing central midfield. Now, I could see a scenario where Santos, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez all start this game and you're just pushing Enzo up a little bit further. So I could see that because Enzo is also someone who plays a lot of football. And I did say in my stat show during the international break, if you haven't seen it, please go and check out what we deep dived into the numbers, that Enzo Fernandez, from an attacking point of view, is one of Chelsea's most threatening players so far this year. Is that a damning indictment on the attack, or is that just a sign of Enzo Fernandez's quality? I think maybe it's a sign of both. Like, we're not maybe doing enough in attack so far this year, but also Enzo Fernandez remains kind of a consistent goal threat for us. And those late runs he makes into the box are really, really effective. So I'm arguing against myself here. I mean, originally I just went Enzo, Caicedo. I do ponder whether Caicedo and Santos would be quite an effective midfield here. And because there's a lot of games you have to rotate effectively. What I'm also trying to guard against is the Brentford situation where you rotate far too much and needlessly and disrupt the team far too much and needlessly, which I think Maresca was guilty of last time. So I think you have to balance those two things out. But let's go with Santos and Caicedo because Enzo has had those maybe fitness concerns. You want to keep him fresh as possible. Then we get right wing. I think Estevao has to start for me. His stats are quite ridiculous. We looked at them. He's obviously, riding the crest of a wave at the moment after the Liverpool goal. I think in these type of games, a deeper defence, maybe space there to exploit, uncertainty in the Forest backline to exploit. This is the time for Estevao without Cole Palmer to really step up and flourish. I also wonder if James and him, especially if James maybe has a little bit more license to go forward, that could be quite a devastating little combination on the right for Chelsea with Estevao cutting onto that left foot and Reece maybe overlapping. I know we don't see it from Reece as much anymore, but if they are up on the pitch, combining with each other, I think that could be quite exciting. Joao Pedro, though, I'm going to play as a number 10 in this game. I just think it will suit him a bit more because of who I'm going to play up top and the reasoning why. I'd like to see Garnacho start. It's rare you won't see Pedro Neto start, but if Neto also has some doubts, again, lots of games. And I was impressed by what I saw from Garnacho in the first half against Liverpool. And again, I'm talking about, players who we need more shots. We need players who are going to be a bit more daring. And I think that's what Garnacho will provide, particularly at the back post. If you've got players, an Estevao cross to the back post, I think, if Enzo Fernandez isn't there, maybe Garnacho could be there to really impact things. And then up top, Mark Guiu. There's now no more excuse really that we're not, the theory is we're not playing him because of a loan. We've played him. And looking at how the season began, where Liam Delap was being used kind of as a real focal point that other players could bounce off, could play the ball into, link up to, occupy the defenders, open up space for others. That's why Joao Pedro's early season performances were really, really good, probably, because it opened up space for him compared to when Delap got injured. Who out of Maresca's options is the most like Liam Delap in terms of a profile? And it's only Mark Guiu. There's kind of no one else currently in the squad, unless you're promoting from the academy. Shim Mueko, maybe gets promoted. But Mark Guiu, I think there's a lot there that there is to work. It's raw, it's erratic, but I think he can also be quite effective. And I think he'll occupy defenders. He'll be a willing runner. He will also, I think, be a type of player that will kind of maybe capitalise and be a little bit more alert to sluggishness within the Forest defence, because he goes for every ball. He's kind of just, such a willing runner, like kind of the naivety sometimes, or just, relentless energy of young players. I think that's, and it's a big chance for Guiu. And it was kind of where I sat pre-Brentford after that international break and the deadline day, where we knew Guiu would remain. And I think use him to the best of his capability, try and make something of him, because again, just having a natural centre forward in that position may also help the issue currently, because we're not taking enough shots. Maybe in attack we're not being as impactful as we should be, and we need to start racking up these wins over this period. We need to be racking up wins in the Premier League to start progress in the table. So that is my predicted 11. Please, as ever, let me know your thoughts and feelings and everything in between in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you again very, very soon. All the best.